Hell hath no fury like Doom. What at first appears to be a basic shooter filled with demons quickly reveals itself to be one of gaming's most complex first-person games to date, with its reliance on movement and quick reflexes. Across its 25-year lifespan, the Doom franchise has seen astounding success. However, that isn't to say it never faced its fair share of challenges, and a handful of controversies to boot. Before we begin, be sure to subscribe to MojoPlays and click on the links in the description to vote on upcoming content. Welcome to MojoPlays, and today we're checking out the origins of the Doom franchise. Coming hot off the heels of their newly released Wolfenstein 3D, id Software was busy at work finishing up their prequel to their first hit, Spear of Destiny. Meanwhile, id co-founder John Carmack spent time working on a new graphics engine for their next project, which was potentially to become an Aliens licensed game. However, the team would drop that project, opting for more creative freedom over their game. Carmack would suggest basing that game around demons versus technology. Doom would take inspiration from many movies and video games. Alongside the Alien films, Evil Dead 2 was also cited as a major influence. The designs of mazes in Pac-Man would also help guide some of the level design, from the layouts to the power-ups. One notable movie that would help Carmack settle on the game's title was The Color of Money. Ironically enough, in one scene, Vincent Lauria, played by Tom Cruise, shows up to a pool table with his custom cue inside of his suitcase. When somebody asks, "What have you got there?" he grins and simply replies,
Doom.
Not everyone was excited about this new project though. Tom Hall, who had created the Commander Keen series with Carmack and John Romero, wanted to continue his beloved series. The rest of the team felt differently, wanting to use the new game engine for something more realistic looking than cartoony. Hall would become the creative director and pen the famous game design document, the Doom Bible. This document featured an intricate storyline, detailed descriptions of different playable characters, and went deep into the lore of the game's world. Carmack was not in favor of this highly elaborate plan, and eventually Hall left under a forced resignation in the summer of 1993. Doom was as unique in its level design as it was in its animation. While most of the enemies, particularly the smaller ones, were made with sprite work, some of the bigger baddies were sculpted. Doom Guy, the Cyber Demon, and the Baron of Hell were made out of clay, while the Mancubus, Archvile, Revenant, and Spider Mastermind were made of latex and metal. The textures used throughout some of the levels were actually photos of real-world objects that were scanned and digitized, which is technically a technique that's still used in game development today. Some of these objects included a pair of snakeskin boots, the hand of fellow developer Kevin Cloud, and a wound on Cloud's knee. There's no doubt that some of the music in Doom was inspired by famous heavy metal bands too. id Software hired Bobby Prince, who had previously worked on Wolf 3D and Commander Keen games, to compose the music, or to create loose covers of songs, however way you want to see it. Surprisingly enough, none of the bands whose songs were used as inspiration, air quotes, ever took any legal action. Now, when it comes to selling your game, it is important to have cover art to grab the player's interest. The idea that Romero and illustrator Don Punchatz had was for the Space Marine to be firing down at a horde of demons on top of a small hill. So they hired a model to do that, but the model gave nothing interesting in their poses. In mild frustration, Romero took off his shirt, grabbed the prop gun, and told the model to get on the floor. "This is what I'm talking about," he said to Punchatz. To this day, Romero jokes that I am the Doom guy, at least on the cover. Doom was released on December 10th, 1993, and it took the world by storm. However, it wasn't released as a retail game, but as a shareware. This would allow users to create more copies to share the game with friends, which would also open up the doors for anyone who wanted to play the multiplayer mode. Doom wouldn't see an official retail release until late 1995 under the title The Ultimate Doom. Over 1 million units were sold, and the game was installed on more computers worldwide than Windows 95. This did not go unnoticed by Microsoft either. At one point, the computer company considered buying id Software, and the company used Doom to promote Windows 95 as a gaming platform.
We really believe that with their help, we'll be able to clean up this DOS mess and get everything focused on Windows.
Despite seeing tremendous success, Doom quickly came under fire by the news media. At first, the game was criticized for its satanic imagery and extreme violence, with some going so far as to call it a mass murder simulator. Unbeknownst to anyone though, Doom was about to be a big part in what is still one of gaming's biggest debates. But more on that later. As Doom continued to sell, id Software quickly began work on its sequel. Doom 2: Hell on Earth released on September 30th, 1994, just 9 months after the release of the first game. While Doom 2 was not a significant improvement in terms of graphics or technical developments, what Doom 2 succeeded in was expanding. Levels were larger and more intricate in their layouts. Bosses from the previous game became normal enemies, while new bosses were tougher and more challenging. This was also the debut of the iconic Super Shotgun, which would become a staple in future titles. Critical reception was just as strong as the first Doom as well, and an official expansion titled Master Levels for Doom 2 would be released on December 30th, 1995. Of course, even the most successful of franchises run into a few hiccups at some point. Final Doom was 5 months later on May 31st, 1996. The game was made by brothers Dario and Milo Casali, who had the honor of being on a mailing list for Doom editors. After creating 8 levels over the course of a month, they sent their set to then id developer American McGee. id Software hired the brothers to produce a game of 31 levels in 4 months of time. Critical reception for this was a mixed bag. Final Doom was considered by many to be a decent game, but no better than its predecessors. On top of the spike in difficulty too, the game suffered from less than impressive technical designs, with visual texture seams and a lower frame rate. Some even viewed the game as just another port of Doom and considered the game engine to be outdated. At this point, id Software was ready to pass the torch to another developer. Midway Games would be the first and only company outside of id to develop and publish a Doom game, with the folks at id Software supervising the project. Doom 64 would be one of the franchise's most difficult ventures. Throughout development, Midway faced tough times of employee turnover and creative conflicts. Programmer Aaron Sealer recalls discussion over the multiplayer component of the game too, claiming that the development team didn't believe split-screen deathmatch was a good idea since it would allow players to peek at their opponent's side of the screen. No one's ever had problems with that. Anyway, the idea was scrapped. Other troubles that plagued development were missed deadlines, id Software's dissatisfaction with the level design, and deciding what features to axe in order to create cartridge space. Doom 64 could not have launched at a more inappropriate time, releasing on March 31st, 1997 in North America and December 2nd, 1997 elsewhere. Reviews were primarily negative, with critics citing a lack of a jump button and the inability to look up or down, the absence of multiplayer, and an overall mediocre set of gameplay. To make matters worse, another revolutionary shooter released in between Doom 64's North American and worldwide release dates. GoldenEye 007, developed by Rare and launched on August 25th, 1997, was a first-person shooter with a thrilling single-player campaign, an insanely fun split-screen multiplayer mode, screen peeking included, and impressive graphics for an N64 game. With the debut of GoldenEye mixing with the negative feedback, Doom 64 would go on to perform very poorly in sales. Throughout the decade, as Doom was seeing success upon success, violence in video games had become a widely discussed and very controversial topic. Throughout that decade, Doom would be used as a frequent example, alongside Mortal Kombat, about the potential dangers of children and young adults being overexposed to graphic violence and disturbing imagery found in many games. On April 20th, 1999, the Columbine High School massacre shocked the world. Once the backgrounds of the perpetrators were investigated, it was discovered that the two had extensively played Doom over the years. Some believed that the students had been influenced by the game and may have used their edited levels to plan their attack. Other factors that were blamed included death metal music, gothic culture, and isolation from their peers.
But other students said the Klan was often avoided because they were strange and that jokes were often shared among classmates.
But a year after the incident, id Software was still gearing up for their next venture. Despite some of the staff wanting to work on something brand new, it was ultimately decided to bring Doom into the new millennium. Work began in late 2000, shortly after id had released Quake 3 Team Arena, with plans to make this new Doom focus more on story and to use id Software's newest game engine. id Tech 4 would allow for unified lighting, superscripting, and complex animations. As development on Doom 3 was underway, Columbine High School was still recovering from the recent massacre. A month after the tragedy, parents and relatives of the victims began filing lawsuits. Some cases were dismissed, while others were settled outside of court. id Software would find themselves entangled in one of these lawsuits, with issues being pointed to Doom's marketing and gameplay. Like any violent video game, the media would be misinformed on the game's content, though. The case against id Software, as well as other game companies, would be dismissed in 2002 on account that the studios could not have foreseen that their games would cause this travesty. Doom 3 would release on August 3rd, 2004, and was welcomed with critical acclaim. The game received praise for its animation, presentation, and graphical achievements. However, critics and fans were split on the game's approach, which took the series into a more horrific setting with its dark lighting and suspenseful moments. Others felt that the game's story was vague at times, and gameplay ended up being too dependent on gimmicks. With its success, Doom 3 would spawn 2 novels written by Matthew J. Costello, who also wrote Doom 3, and would be loosely adapted into a movie starring Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson and Carl Urban in 2005, but we don't talk about that one. For the next decade, the franchise fell into silence as id Software was developing a new IP known as Rage. While Carmack had confirmed in 2007 that a new Doom game was in the works, there weren't many details being shared with the public. One major detail wasn't shared until 2009, when ZeniMax, the parent company of Bethesda and its studios, bought id Software for an undisclosed amount, stating that all future id Software games would be published by Bethesda Softworks, including, quote, Doom 4. But there was no question that Doom 4 was going through some troubled development. Vague hints and a lack of any significant announcement left fans questioning Doom's future. As gamers were speculating, id Software was facing their own problems with the project. id was playing similarly to Doom 2 and Doom 3, where the game focuses more on its narrative, with the story taking place on Earth. It wasn't until 2013 when the public learned about the disastrous state of the project for real. An expose by Kotaku news editor Jason Schreier revealed that several sources within id Software had a distaste for what the project was turning into. Moments within the game focused too heavily on scripted sequences and cinematics, with some comparing it to the likes of Activision's Call of Duty. It just didn't feel like a Doom game. Like the many demons within the game, the new Doom was far from over. Resurrection began 2 years after the aforementioned expose was published, and a year later, in 2014, the world was given another brief glimpse of Doom's return. Gradually, fans' faith in returning to hell was clawing its way back. By this point, most of the original creators of the series had gone their separate ways. John Romero had resigned after an intense conflict with Carmack during Quake's development. Carmack, on the other hand, left id Software in the middle of the new Doom's development to work at Oculus. Adrian Carmack, coincidentally not related to John, left id in 2005 to pursue other interests too. Serving as a reboot, this new Doom would be developed by a new set of faces who wanted to center the game around what the franchise had been known for: gore, violence, intense music, heart-pounding action, moment-focused gameplay, and technological achievement. Environments would be inspired by heavy metal, rock, and, oddly enough, He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. As the game's composer, Mick Gordon would make use of 7-string and 8-string guitars, as well as synthesizing chainsaw noises to create the vicious score. On top of all that, the ambition for a cinematic story was dropped entirely. On May 13, 2016, Doom finally saw the light of day, releasing on PC, PlayStation 4, and Xbox One, and man was it worth the wait. Doom 2016 received universal acclaim from critics and fans alike, featuring a thrilling single-player campaign and a multiplayer mode that basically nobody touched. Doom was well worth the price of admission, boasting a unique visual style and excellent animations. Graphics clocked in at a solid 1080p resolution and ran at a constant 60 frames per second on console. Doom Guy, now known as the Doom Slayer, quickly became recognized as one of the best-written protagonists in gaming, given how players could relate to his insatiable thirst for bloodshed and disregard for the plot. Doom was back with a vengeance. Doom is more than just a game about shooting a big frickin' gun. It was a pioneer in the first-person shooter genre with its technology and gameplay style, and you can still see its influence in today's blockbuster titles. It's a series that has proven age is merely a number, lasting 25 years and still seeing outpouring success. If id Software's history of Doom was to be summed up in one phrase, allow us to borrow one of the UAC slogans: opening the gates of hell with the key to the future. Thanks for watching Mojo Plays. Be sure to subscribe and click on the link in the description below to check out our suggestion page and vote on what content you'd like to see us cover next.